These Blitz buffs are looking super spicy, and we're finally seeing some nerfs to Gwen and Sylas. Welcome back everyone to the SkillCapped 11.15 tier list update, where with the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most recent data, we strive to bring you guys the most accurate read on the solo queue meta. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description for a special discount. So with all that said, let's get into it. Just like in 11.14, we have a very light patch in regards to item and rune changes, as Hullbreaker is the only item buffed. The armor and magic resist you receive for being isolated is increased from 25 scaling to 45 up to 25 scaling to 60. A small buff to give the items some more power in the latter stages, but nothing too crazy. Champs like Illaoi, Nasus, Yorick, Urgot, and Jax will have more reason to purchase the item instead of Sterix if the win condition is to split. So it looks like Irelia players got one patch to abuse their champion in a strong state, as Riot won't be wasting any time to nerf her. W damage AD ratio will drop from 50 to 40%. W physical damage reduction goes from 40 scaling to 80% down to 40 scaling to 70%. W magic damage reduction will be reduced from 20 scaling to 40% down to 20 scaling to 35%. The 11.14 buffs definitely turned Irelia into a much stronger late game champion, so these nerfs aim to shave a bit of that power off. You don't need to be too worried, as our analysts believe Irelia will remain a top tier pick for 11.15. We see her on the fence between S and A tier, but we'll be leaving her in S for now. Gwen's early game all-in power is being snipped quite substantially, as her E attack speed will be lowered from 40 scaling to 80% down to 20 scaling to 80%. 20% less attack speed renders Gwen's level 1 plays way less potent. There will be plenty of better options to carry with in 11.15, as Gwen will be dropping down into B tier. Wukong will have his sustain reduced in 11.15, as his health regen per 5 seconds is going from 4 down to 2.5. With a couple other top laners rising up over the past few patches, combined with this nerf, we'll be dropping Wukong out of OP tier for the first time in months. The nerf really isn't the end of the world though, as our analysts will be rating him as an S tier pick. A top laner I kind of forgot even existed in Kennen is being handed a solid buff to his Q for 11.15. Damage will be increased from 75 scaling to 235 up to 85 scaling to 265. AP ratio on Q is buffed as well, going from 75 to 85%. Irelia coming back into meta isn't the best for Kennen, but this buff should at least make him a viable counter pick option in the patches to come. Q max is the way to go these days on Kennen as well, so 30 extra damage at level 9 is nothing to scoff at. We'll be bumping Kennen from B tier into A as a result of these buffs. Another AP top laner will be buffed this patch, as Mordekaiser sees his W cooldown reduced from 14 scaling to 10 seconds to 12 scaling to 8 seconds. Damage stored from W is being increased from 35 to 45%. Mord hasn't been in the greatest spot over the past while, so these buffs should bring him back in line as a solid carry option. Mordekaiser will be locking down an A tier position for 11.15. Alright, the top lane tier list is looking pretty interesting to say the least. We've got Tahm, Camille, and Sett as the 3 OP picks of the patch. Tahm Kench of all champions has leapfrogged past everyone and is dominating the top lane meta after his buffs. Q now healing, combined with passive damage being applied by Q, has turned Tahm into a massive lane bully. On top of this, he fares extremely well into the most picked top laners, being Sett, Irelia, and Fiora. Watch out for Tahm to really explode in play rate for 11.15 as everyone catches on to his true strength. Not only is Tahm placed in OP tier this patch, but he'll join Yorick and Garen as the best low elo picks. Highest value bans for top lane include Sett, Irelia, and Malphite. It's been some time since we've seen Nidalee in meta, so she's in line for a couple buffs. Base health will be increased from 545 up to 570, while health per level is buffed as well, going from 85 to 95. Base stat buffs are always overlooked, but these ones are actually massive. At the end of your clear, when you hit level 3 or 4, you'll have around 50 extra health, which is huge for those early skirmishes. As we all know, Nidalee is extremely reliant on getting a lead to function, so an early game buff like this will help her tremendously. We'll be bumping Nidalee up 1 tier, going from B into A for 11.15. Shyvana is the second jungler buffed, as much like Nidalee, I can't even remember the last time I had a Shyvana in one of my games. Q cooldown drops from 9 scaling to 5 seconds to 7 scaling to 5 seconds. Q AP ratio is buffed as well, going from 25 up to 35%. Q buff is actually pretty solid as you don't max the spell out until last, so the 2 seconds off at rank 1 is nice. AP ratio buff helps a little with her scaling, but since Shyvana is way more focused around poke damage from E, we don't see the change being very significant. Shiv could squeeze into A tier with these buffs, but realistically, our analysts continue to rate her as a B tier pick for this patch. The last jungle buff will go to Rumble, as Riot will be making the passive heat decay and overheat checking more consistent. They've also stated that various bug fixes will be issued. We don't have a ton to go off of here and aren't completely sure how impactful these buffs will be, so we'll keep Rumble placed in C tier for now. The W nerf a few patches back was extremely harsh, and Rumble's been struggling to find any footing since then. So other than a few minor adjustments, the jungle meta will look exactly the same as 11.14. Nocturne and Xayah will continue to stomp on the rest of the competition, while Nidalee moves up 1 tier due to her buff, and Gwen will be dropping down as a result of the E nerf that we covered when looking at top lane Gwen. Even though Riot has labeled the Viego nerf as a lane-focused change, it still negatively impacts Viego jungle too. 10 base damage off on Q will hurt his skirmish potential, so we'll be moving Viego from S into A for 11.15. Our top 3 low elo jungle recommendations are Warwick, Rammus, and Fiddlesticks. A few good bans to consider include Nocturne, Xayah, and Lee Sin. Moving on to mid lane, let's break down the Sylas changes. Q damage will be increased from 60 scaling to 280 up to 70 scaling to 290. AP ratio on Q is going up as well from 80 to 90%. To compensate, W healing is being reduced from 30 scaling to 150 down to 25 scaling to 125. AP ratio on W heal drops from 45 to 40%. Now, considering how strong Sylas has been, it's a bit surprising to see a compensation buff thrown in instead of a straight-up nerf. Nonetheless, the overall effects of these changes shouldn't alter Sylas' power level much at all. Sylas will keep his spot in OP tier for now, but if the W nerf is more severe, then we anticipate S tier is as far as we see him dropping. A nerf targeted towards stunting Annie's strength in the lower elos will be issued. AP ratio on Annie Q is dropping from 80 down to 75%. We don't expect much out of this change in regards to Annie's power level, as she will remain in S tier. It seems like every patch we have one of those out of the blue nerfs, and that award goes to Aurelion Sol for 11.15. Apparently, Riot sees him as a problem champion despite his play rate sitting below 1%. Regardless, E-flight distance is being lowered from 5,500 scaling to 7,500 down to 5,000 at all ranks. A nerf to Sol's mobility and roaming power, which is a big hit but not enough to warrant a drop down the tier list, as he'll remain in A. Mid lane Kayle is another strange one being targeted this patch, as her base magic resist is dropping from 30 down to 26. 4 base MR is a sizable nerf that will make Kayle's early laning even more vulnerable than it already is. Kayle can definitely be a great mid lane counter in certain situations, but as a blind pick, she'll get punished too hard after this change. A tier is where Kayle finds a spot for this patch. Lane Viego is being hit once again, as the nerf from a few patches back didn't accomplish much in terms of reducing his power level. Q base damage will be lowered from 25 scaling to 85 down to 15 scaling to 75. To compensate for Viego jungle, Q bonus damage to monsters is increased from 10 up to 20. Lastly, the Q heal from minions is being lowered from 50 down to 10%. All in all, a couple pretty impactful nerfs that will put a dent in Viego's oppressive early laning. As a result, we'll be shifting Viego down 1 tier, dropping from S into A. Cassiopeia mains will be eating real good in 11.15, as her E damage is being doubled at rank 1, going from 10 up to 20. Overall, the spell will be increased by 10 damage at all ranks. 10 damage may not seem like a whole lot, but it's massive for someone like Cass, who can spam the ability out multiple times in quick succession. When posturing for an early all-in play, you may end up throwing out anywhere from 3 to 5 E's, so that 10 extra damage adds up really fast. This change, coupled with the mage item buffs from a few patches back, will propel Cass into a strong S-tier placement. It's about time we see a direct buff to Syndra, as she's been rotting in the gutter for what seems like an eternity. Mana cost on Q is being lowered at the earlier ranks, going from 60 scaling to 80 down to 40 scaling to 80. Great buff overall that will add up very quickly over time, as Syndra loves to spam Q in lane. For the first time in Season 11, Syndra will be moving out of C tier and into a B tier positioning for 11.15. Running down the complete mid lane tier list, we have Katarina and Sylas as the 2 OP picks. As mentioned, Cassio is moving into S tier, and Graves mid is one to watch that's being played to a lot of success, especially over in EU. The 2 base AD buffs Graves was handed have led to him seeing insane results as a solo laner, as you play him full out lethality burst. The pushing power from Q combined with strong skirmish is the perfect recipe for a top tier solo Q mid laner. The three godlike mid lane picks for low elo include Garen, Malzahar, and Annie. Katarina, Sylas, and Kassadin are all great choices for a ban. A very light patch for ADC, as we've got a few buffs to some of the weaker marksmen. Caitlyn will have her Q-AD ratio increase from 130 scaling to 170% up to 130 scaling to 190%. Would have been really nice to see the AD ratio buff slightly at level 1, but you can't win them all. Kate has been ping-ponging between a B and A tier standing for a while now, so this buff will solidify her as an A tier pick. Xayah mains finally have something to be excited about, as her ultimate cooldown is being lowered by 20 seconds at rank 1. This is actually a revert to a nerf way back from Season 9. If we remember correctly, it was actually the nerf that dropped Xayah out of meta, so this change will be huge in regards to her power level. Our analysts have Xayah moving out of C tier into a B tier position for 11.15, and could very well see her shifting into A tier with one more little buff. So for a few patches in a row now, Kog'Maw and Ziggs will continue to stomp on the rest of the meta. Ashe has been moved into S tier as the new Korean build is proving to pack a serious punch. Watch out for a Korean builds video this patch, as we'll be breaking it down there. Other than the few outliers like Ziggs, the rest of the bot lane meta is quite balanced with many good S tier picks to choose from. If your goal is to climb low elo the fastest, then maining Ziggs, MF, or Sivir is what we would recommend. Best bot lane bans for 11.15 include Vayne, Ezreal, and Ziggs. Even after multiple direct nerfs, Thresh has stood the test of time and has been a dominant force. Riot will be taking another stab at forcing the Chain Warden down the tier list with a nerf to his E cooldown. Cooldown will be increased from 11 scaling to 9 seconds up to 13 scaling to 10 seconds. Most high elo Thresh players max E out last, so 2 seconds off at rank 1 is a decent hit. Will it be enough to drop him down the tier list though? Likely not. We think Thresh will be holding on to his S tier spot by a thread after this nerf. Blitz is back in business in a huge way for 11.15, as Riot will be issuing two pretty massive buffs. Base armor jumps from 37 up to 40, while Q damage is increased by 20 at all ranks. Q AP ratio is increased from 100 up to 120%. Personally, I'm all for these playmaking supports in meta, and these buffs will certainly push Blitz back into a powerful state. 20 extra damage at rank 1 is insane for those all-in plays, and will make capitalizing on hooks way more consistent. Go grab some elo while you can, as Blitz will be moving into OP tier. Rell had a great run as one of the most OP supports, but has fallen off the tracks as of recent, so she'll see buffs in 11.15. W cooldown will be lowered from 13 to 11 seconds, a simple buff that offers up more frequent playmaking potential. This will translate very well into the solo queue environment and propel Rell into A tier. So, rounding everything out with the support tier list, we have Blitz and Lulu as the most broken picks of the patch. With Leona and Thresh being so prominent in the current meta, adding Rell back into your champion pool after her buffs to shut those picks down is a great idea. Xerath's support is one garnering a lot of attention over in Korean solo queue at the moment. Mage supports like Xerath and Zyra have become much stronger after the mage item buffs, so if you're looking for a damage-oriented support, they're both great options. The best low elo supports to spam right now are Brand, Leona, and Zyra. Highest priority bans in 11.15 land on Leona, Blitz, and Lulu. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we are able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO Hell 629 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $4.99 a month if you're serious about improving. Alright guys, good luck out there in 11.15, and we will see you in the next one.